Well, we'll try this again. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Eating the Elephant. We had some sort of breakdown, I guess, in our connection here. I'm going to sort of restart because this is going to get posted on our Facebook page, so be patient with me for just a minute while we recover a couple of the things I talked about. We started out by talking about shrink-wrap companies and how this may or may not be a good option for you. Shrink-wrap is sort of a super tarp. It's evidently a very, very good product. It's very weather resistant and will last much, much longer than a tarp. However, the price is pretty hefty, and we've seen a couple of instances where people have not been treated fair by these companies. I've reached out, I've had a conversation, not with a specific company that has been complained about, but we did have somebody come into our office and complain they had signed an AOB, which, you know, my feelings on AOB, don't ever sign one. And we also, the tarp job on this, the shrink wrap job on this particular house was nearly $15,000. That seems pretty pricey. They were concerned because they were arguing with their insurance company that it was going to be quite some time before they could get a roof on their home. And it turns out the roof was only about 18 grand, maybe a little better than that. And so that doesn't seem like a good exchange of value. These are decisions you're going to have to make, of course, for yourself. However, I would urge you, number one, I will say it again and again, do not sign an assignment of benefits. And if you're going to go with a product that's as expensive as a shrink wrap, be really, really sure you need it. Be sure you can't have your tarp tacked back down, or be sure that if you're not leaking, if you're dry, there's no need to get a product such as that anyway. We're going to do some more investigative work on the back end of this, but my advice in general right now is to be very, very suspicious of shrink wrap companies unless you have a very specific application where a tarp is unlikely to work. We're going to give that a little short shrift now and move on to insurer delay. And I've been very frustrated, I'm sure as some of you have been, that there are some insurance companies undoubtedly delaying. Early on we saw some that were understaffed, that weren't prepared for this storm, and they were moving slowly, I think because they were understaffed. And they just weren't prepared for this magnitude of a storm. I don't give them any excuse for that. This is when they're supposed to shine, and they need to find a way to adapt and overcome. That's their problem, not your problem. It shouldn't be your problem anyway. So when they underperform like that, it's very frustrating for us. And I think there's undoubtedly some insurance companies that misbehave. In my experience, I've not seen a lot of that. Most of the insurance companies in our office have performed well. I will say this, that I don't have everyone in my office settled and satisfied yet, but of the nearly 1,800 claims that we had in our office, I am down to 4, which I find are just really, really still intractable. I think that's a pretty good number. I would really like that number to be 0, frankly. All 4 of these customers that I'm talking about have received some funds, but I still think they're being unnecessarily dragged through the weeds on this. Now, undoubtedly, we have more customers than that probably are still having some difficulty in working through a claim, but it's not anything that I think is intractable, and it's sort of working through the process, even if it's a little bit slow. The biggest problem we're seeing now is still contractors. There is just only a certain number of people that can get out to your home and reliably give you an estimate and start doing the work. There's been an awful lot of interruption in people's lives where they'll call people, set an appointment, there's a no-show, they call someone else, there's a no-show. Then they might get somebody there to the house, they may do a poor job, no job, may want too much of a deposit. And so we're seeing an awful lot of churning and a lot of people spending time on this hamster wheel, just really going nowhere. There's people in neutral. And that has more to do with contractors, I think, right now than insurance companies. Now, having said that, I do want to talk about the math. Again, I want to fully admit that I think there are insurance companies that delay on purpose, and I think that's absolutely inexcusable. I don't think any insurance company should do it, and when they get caught doing it, I hope they get creamed by the Department of Insurance or whatever attorney out there is going to go after them. What I will say is, and what I'd speak to those insurance companies in general too, I think it's just bad business. Not only is it behaving poorly, and it's certainly not going to gain you any traction in the public. You're certainly not going to have repeat customers. The other thing is, I just think it's a stupid financial decision. And let's look at it this way. One of the things that I see bounced about on social media is people saying, oh, insurers delay in order to make interest on that money, and they can make millions and billions and trillions of dollars in interest on that money if they just delay paying it to you. I think that's a complete fallacy, and I'll tell you why. Let's say an insurance company owes you $100,000 and they know it, and they drag you out 6 months. Okay, so that saves them, if you look at a 6% interest rate, that saves them $3,000. Insurance companies spend about 15 to 20% of their money on what they call LAE, or loss adjustment expense. And so they're spending a tremendous amount of money to get that claim handled. They have an awful lot of people in that food chain they have to pay. They have to pay an initial adjuster who's going to get paid. They're going to have a desk adjuster, one or more. They have a desk adjuster supervisor. They may have an auditor, an engineer. They may have additional building consultants. And so every time one of those people gets involved in the claim and touches that file, I have to say that's a pretty expensive process. These are not people that are getting paid minimum wage. And so they're going to spend a great deal more than that $3,000 in savings just by continuing to touch that file and handle it over and over and over every few days for 6 months. I've got Dan Swanson who's asking about insurance companies that did a good job during this storm. And I did post about this 3 or 4 days ago. I'll have to look, and I'll post it again. I will say I think USAA probably is the winner. They're one of my competitors. They only do military families, but I think they are undoubtedly the best. They did a good job, and they have technology like no one else. I think number 2 was probably Tower Hill. They stayed in town they just left town, as a matter of fact. They were working out of our office and had people on the ground for more than 5 months, and I think they've done an excellent job. I've heard good things about some other companies such as Gulfstream. They're not somebody I have in my office. And oddly enough, Citizens Insurance Company, who has been atrocious in the past, finally has gotten it together and has done a good job. I'll post a longer list of who I think the good and bad players were on our webpage. On our Facebook page, and we'll get back to that. And we'll keep track of that as we go through this storm, because everybody knows we're a long way from finished. I want to talk a little bit about townhouses and attached dwellings, because that's come up now. And by townhouses, I'm going to talk about either a string of homes that are strung together and have maybe firewalls in between. Some may not, or even a duplex or triplex where you've got 2 dwellings attached together. Where we've seen problems both in Mexico Beach and over here in Panama City, Lynn Haven, is one half is damaged very, very badly. Somebody decides to tear it down and maybe wants to sell the property. Maybe they don't want to do anything with it. Maybe they don't have the right insurance coverage to do it. So what is the other townhouse owner to do? That's a real problem, and it really affects your value. Frankly, you're very limited. You are essentially married to this other person in this other structure, and you're stuck to some degree with their results. What you're going to have to do is, if you can, you'd obviously like to be in touch with them and their insurance company and see if you can coordinate things. But if you can't, the question is, what do you do? Well, if you have a firewall between the units, you're in better shape, because you just work your way to the firewall and you make your side the way it needs to be. And there's not much you can do about the other side. The problem that we've seen most recently is a duplex home without a firewall in between the 2 units. So we had very, very bad damage on the other side. Our client received fairly minimal damage, fortunately, but the owner on the other side simply tore down theirs and left it. It leaves decking, well, not decking, but exposed wood. It leaves exposed insulation, things such as that on the other side. So what's that homeowner to do? Well, it's not really their house. It sort of is, sort of isn't. That part wasn't really damaged by the hurricane, and it wasn't an exterior wall before the storm. So what is the insurance company for my client required to do? And what are my insured's options after the storm if the neighbor's not going to be cooperative? What if the neighbor wants to put on a metal roof instead of shingles? They can certainly do it, and then you have a mismatched townhouse. What you need to remember is, you're married to that other property owner, and you may, if the issue is severe, you may need to engage an attorney. But mostly, you need to consider yourself kind of on your own, and you need to talk to your insurance company, sort of coordinate as best you can to get your townhouse looking the way it's supposed to, and getting that party wall, that middle wall, get something done with that that's acceptable to you and something that the insurance company can get on board with paying with. If you have that specific example or that specific situation, give me a call at the office and we'll talk you through it. We are going to talk to some attorneys and get some opinions on that and see if you have any better options than just watching it. The advice I gave our client most recently was to repair that wall as best they could. They could certainly go on the other person's property, I think, because they would have to physically in order to make the repairs. Do what they could do, make it where it was aesthetically pleasing. And frankly, what I told them to do is I thought they should pursue the other homeowner. And if they could very quickly get some sort of judgment, they could put a lien on the property before it was sold. It looked like this other homeowner was going to sell the property as vacant. And while I certainly feel badly about them being having a harder time doing that, my job is to protect my client. And if my client can get a lien on that property that has to be satisfied in order for that person to sell it, that puts them back in the position they need to be, and they're protected. Last thing I want to go with today is I want to talk a little bit about something that we're going to do called the insurance pilot. We've talked about pilot. So those of you that have been around very long have met him. This was my gift from Pat Futrell. And those of you that have been around long enough know how the elephant got his name. But we're going to talk about a new series that I'd like to begin. Probably it'll be another month. That will be called the Insurance Pilot, and what we're going to talk about is navigating you through all kinds of insurance issues. We've restricted ourselves to issues here that are post-Michael, that are recovery related, but certainly there's an awful lot of insurance issues that a lot of people are going to have questions about, and we're going to do a brief series. I think what we're going to try to do is keep it a much shorter format, and we're going to probably do it just once a week, but what we need to know is, what do you want to know? What are the kind of things you'd like to know? We're going to talk about auto insurance coverage, how to save money, what not to do, what does uninsured motorist coverage mean, how can you improve the premium on your house, what are the things that you need to worry about. If you have pets, if you have animals, what are the issues that come up there? What about kids away from college, away in college? What kind of insurance issues do these bring up, and how can you solve them? How can you be a better insurance consumer and save money and improve your coverage at the same time? So if you will, I would like your help. I would like you to either post something on our Facebook page or email me at trey@huttinsurance.com and give me some of the issues that are of concern to you. I know these things. These are not things that I need to talk about for my own health. We want to talk about things that you want to hear about. The most effective episodes of Eating the Elephant, in my opinion, have been those that have come not from things that I think we should talk about or that I've seen at my office, but they come from issues that you bring to me. The concerns that you tell me about on Facebook or via email or via direct message have been the things that I think have been the most effective, and they've gotten the most reaction when we look at the metrics after the episodes. We're going to leave it there. I hope you do have a good evening tonight, and I hope you'll have a good week. We'll see you, as usual, on Wednesday evening.